Hey everyone, and welcome. So, have you ever stopped to think about something kind of weird in global trade? Why is it that a country that's an absolute giant at making something, like cars, also turns around and buys millions of cars from other countries? You'd think they wouldn't need to, right? Well, today we're going to solve that exact puzzle.
I mean, think about it. You've got Germany and Japan, two of the biggest car-making nations on the planet. They ship out billions and billions of dollars worth of vehicles. And yet, they're also massive importers of cars. It's not like they've run out or forgotten how to make them. No, there's something much more interesting going on here, and it's at the very heart of the modern global economy.
And believe it or not, there's a name for this whole phenomenon. It's called intra-industry trade, or just IIT for short. It's really just a straightforward term for when countries are exporting and importing goods from the very same industry. So it's not just Germany selling cars to countries that don't make any. It's Germany selling BMWs to Japan, while Japan sells Toyotas right back to Germany. It's this two-way street that we're going to unpack today.
Yeah, here's where it gets really cool. This back-and-forth trade isn't all one thing. Economists actually split it into two main, flavors. And once you get this distinction, the whole picture of the global economy starts to make a lot more sense.
It all boils down to one simple difference: variety versus quality. So on one hand, you've got horizontal IIT. The easiest way to think about this is trading flavors. You're swapping products that are at a pretty similar quality and price point. Like someone in the US buying a Toyota, while someone in Japan buys a Ford. It's all about having more choices. But then you've got vertical IIT. This is all about trading on different tiers. A country might be great at making basic, affordable PCs that it exports, but it also imports super high-end gaming PCs for a different market. Same product, totally different rungs on the quality ladder.
So, you might be asking, what's behind all this trading of different quality tiers? Well, it really comes down to these key differences between countries. You've got different income levels, which means different consumer demands. You have different tech capabilities. And crucially, you have different amounts of skilled labor and capital. So a country with tons of highly skilled engineers might specialize in that premium, top-tier version of a product, while another country focuses on making the more accessible, mass-market version.
Okay, so if you're an economist, you can't just talk about this stuff, right? You've got to be able to measure it. How much of a country's trade is actually this two-way intra-industry stuff? Well, let's take a look at the OG tool they came up with to figure that out.
And here it is. This is the Grubel-Lloyd Index. It was developed way back in 1975, and it totally kicked off the real study of IIT. Now, I know it looks like a scary math formula, but don't worry. The idea behind it is actually super simple. It's just a really clever way to compare a country's exports to its imports within one specific industry.
So what does this formula actually tell us? Well, it gives you a score, a single number between 0 and 1. So let's say a country only exports cars and imports 0. Its score would be 0. That's pure one-way trade. On the flip side, if its car exports are exactly equal to its car imports, you get a perfect score of 1. And as you can see, for most developed countries, the reality is somewhere in the middle, a healthy mix of both.
The Grubel-Lloyd Index was an awesome start, no doubt about it. But as economists dug in deeper, they started asking, wait a minute, is this one little number really capturing the whole picture? Is it maybe a bit too simple? And yeah, it turns out it was.
It really came down to two major blind spots. First, the index can get a little wonky if a country has a huge trade deficit or surplus overall. But the second point here, that's the big one for us. The basic GL index has no way of telling the difference between that horizontal variety trade and the vertical quality trade. It just mushes it all together into one score.
So clearly, economists needed a better tool. They needed a way to pry open that single number and separate the trade in Fords and Toyotas from the trade in basic laptops and super fancy gaming rigs. They had to figure out how to separate the apples from, the fancier apples.
And the solution they came up with, known as the GHM approach, was pretty brilliant. They decided to use price as a stand-in or a proxy for quality. The idea is really intuitive. If you can figure out the average price per item for what's being exported and imported, you can get a really good sense of whether the trade is based on quality.
Let me just walk you through how it works. First, you figure out the average price of, say, the cars a country is exporting. Then you do the same for the cars it's importing. Finally, you just compare those two prices. If they're pretty close, usually within a 15% range of each other, you can safely call that horizontal trade. It's just swapping different flavors. But if one price is way higher than the other, then you know you're looking at vertical trade, trading up and down those quality tiers.
All right, that's enough of the theory. Let's make this real and see how all of this plays out in a super interesting case study. The Indian economy.
Okay, check out the trend on this chart. It's so clear. As India began to liberalize its economy back in the 90s, the number of industries doing this kind of two-way trade just took off. It skyrocketed. This is a huge signal that its economy was getting way more complex and plugging itself right into those global supply chains. And this growing complexity definitely got noticed. As the economist Danny Roderick pointed out here, by the mid-2000s, it was already obvious that India and China were playing a different game than many of their peers. Their trade patterns were just becoming incredibly sophisticated for their stage of development.
And this is the real kicker. When economists used those newer, smarter measurement tools, they found something that surprised a lot of people. A huge and growing chunk of India's exports, even to places like the US and Europe, weren't just cheap, basic goods. They were high-tech, skill-intensive products. This was clear proof that India was competing in that high-quality, vertical trade game.
Whew, okay, that was a lot of information, I know, but hopefully it's all starting to click into place. So, just to make sure these ideas really stick, let's do a super quick quiz. Just 2 questions. You ready?
First up, let's go back to that Grubel-Lloyd index. If all the car trade is going one way, only out of the country, no imports, what score would it get? I'll give you a second to think.
If you said 0, you got it. A score of 0 means there is 0 intra-industry trade. It's all just one-way traffic, what we call inter-industry trade. Awesome.
All right, question number 2. Picture this. The US is exporting big, expensive Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and at the same time, it's importing small, cheap scooters. Both are motorcycles, right? So what kind of intra-industry trade is that? And that is a textbook example of vertical IT. Yep, you're trading within the same industry, motorcycles, but at completely different ends of the quality and price spectrum. It's all about tiers, not just flavors. And that leads us to our last and honestly our most important question. Why should we care? Why go through all the trouble of measuring this stuff? Well, what kind of trade a country is doing, whether it's horizontal or vertical, tells you so much about its economy. It's a window into its technological muscle, the skill of its people, and where it's headed in the future. So solving this little trade puzzle isn't just for economists. It gives us real insight into how countries grow and compete on the world stage. Thanks so much for joining me.